So, what happened in the Seattle real estate market this May? Well, that's the question I'll be answering today on RE Radar. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Nathan Matheson, and I'm your host and realtor. And what we're all about here on the radar is education. So, buckle up and get ready to learn about what happened in last month's real estate market. For those watching, you'll be seeing graphs on the screen, but if you're listening, I'll make sure to get the details out there so you can understand it just as easily. Now, I'm going to be breaking this down into two segments. First off, I'm going to be looking at just residential in Seattle, and then I'll be bringing in condominiums. Now, price wise, starting off, everyone loves looking at money. And in Seattle, the median sold price in May actually went down from April. April had seen a record high of median sale price in Seattle of 1 million. And in May, that number then has dropped to 980,500. So down just 2%, and also down from March when it was 992,000. But overall, it is still up 2.4% from last year in May. So just because it's down a couple months does not mean all of a sudden home prices are crashing. It's still actually higher than last year. So with it still being up year over year, I do not think this is any sort of a cause for concern, and actually makes sense to me as the real estate market here in Seattle during the summer months, it does see a slowdown, with May to September as being some of the nicest months in Seattle. And this May especially was nicer than the last couple here in Seattle. So people tend to like to enjoy just experiencing that versus having to deal with moving and buying a new home or selling their home. So we do see a slowdown when it gets to that nicer weather here in Seattle. And I think a great way to showcase that slowdown is by looking at some pending data reports. So these are homes that are pending, which that means the seller and the buyer have agreed and signed a purchase and sale agreement for the property. However, it has not yet officially closed. Now, what we're looking at here on the screen is Seattle from May 1st to May 15th. The median unpublished pending price was $1,015,000. From May 15th to May 31st, so the second half of the month, median unpublished pending price went down to $980,000. So the start of May kept up with April. And then as the month continued and people started seeing what was going on, it began slowing down. And as the month ended, houses were not selling for as much as they started in the month of May. Another piece to touch on here in the pending data report before I move on is how we saw a higher percentage of houses pending with multiple offers and more houses pending with escalation clauses during the first 2 weeks of May than the last 2 weeks of May. And the first half of May then also had less financing addendums and less inspection addendums than the last 2 weeks of May saw. What that means is at the start of May, less people were putting in inspection contingencies and financing contingencies into their offer than they are now at the end of May. So the housing market is cooling off in terms of pricing. That's what this data is showing. But what about the actual transactions? And that is where, to me, it is very noticeable that people in Seattle aren't, or they just can't buy houses like they used to. We had a lower number of closed sales in May, 565, compared to April's 584, which, if you recall, April's closed sales data, that was below the previous 12-year average. And now for May, that number is even farther below the 12-year average of May, as in May, 7 of the last 12 years were over 800 closed sales. The 12-year average for May, thus, is 784. So we saw a 28% lower amount of closed sales this May than the average for the past 12 Mays. That's a pretty big drop right there. And what makes it even wilder is when we get into the listing data. And this is why I feel the housing cost crisis is what's going on here, and people just can't afford to buy homes at these absurd prices. I mean, shoot, it costs $500,000 for a fixer-upper in Seattle. That's why we're seeing such low closed sales data, because the houses were there this past May. We saw 1,338 new listings. May 2019 at 1,368 is the only month in the last 15 years to have more new listings. And then as far as homes for sale at the end of the month, there were 1,476. That's 57% more than last May. 2018 and 2019 are the only other years over the last 15 or so that have even been close to that many homes on the market at the end of a month. This has been the theme of every market update I've done this year. The listing data has been there month after month. Each time it's been at or above the historic averages for new listings and total homes for sale. But that closed sales data has not been there. It's been lacking each month. And this past May was the cherry on top of it all with that massive new listing numbers, only to then have less closed sales than the previous month. And what has this led to? Continually, month after month, more and more new listings showing up and less people buying them. Well, that has led to a continued climb of the month supply of inventory closed. So if you're new here, what that stat shows is how many months it would take for every active listing to sell at the current rate of transactions. A seller's market is seen as 0 to 3 months. A more even or fair market is seen as more 4 to 6 months. And then when it gets above 6 months, the advantages then go into the buyers where they have the negotiating and bargaining power in deals and transactions. Seattle has been in a seller's market since November 2011. That was the last time the month supply of inventory hit 4. But we are actually getting closer and closer to that number. We are inching our way to 4. It has risen every month this year, and for May, it just hit 3 months, which that 3 months is the highest it has been since September 2012. Now, everybody locked in that ultra low rates from 2021 to 2022. They refinanced or they bought a new home and got that low rate. Then nobody wanted to sell in 2023 and 2024 because, well, how can you give up a less than 4% rate to then buy in that 7% range? Well, now it's been a few more years, and some of those people just have to sell, whether it be job change, whether it be family change with getting married or getting divorced, having kids, whatever it may be. Something major has happened. So now they have to sell. And what these people are finding out is in today's market right now, if a home is not an awesome, super great home, then it might not be one of those ones that sells first weekend. It might sit around for a little bit. And the more listings that come onto the market and just sit there a little bit, the more negotiating and the more power buyers get on the transactions. That is what then leads to having a buyer's market. Now, transitioning a bit out of residential, that's what we've been looking at. What's the condo market looking at in Seattle? And it is a balanced market. It's at 5.7 months supply inventory closed, and it's been trending that way for a little while now, growing each month since December. Condos are kind of doing what residential's doing, right? With each month so far, what we're seeing, April and May were actually the most new listings condominium-wise since 2010. And then May saw also the most condos for sale since 2011 to end any month. So condos are coming onto the market just like residential. But again, just like residential, the buyers aren't really there. Now, a condo traditionally has always been seen as kind of less desirable than a single family residential house. So while the housing market has also been struggling with closed sales data, the price for homes have continued going up. And it might have gone down from April to May, but still up 2.4% year over year residential wise. That's not the case for condos. The median sale price for a condominium has actually gone down every month this year. In January, it was $650,000, the best ever. Now, fast forward to May, the median sale price for condos, $568,000. The condo market has not been able to sustain these higher prices with the interest rates around 7%. Condos are sitting on the market with the buyers then not being out there to buy them. Another thing I like to bring up with condos and kind of touching on the subject of why they're not being able to sustain this as well as residential maybe is just condos as a whole. You're buying a whole building. You're not just buying your unit. So you're buying a big building. And in Seattle, the big wave of condominium complexes came around the 1980s. So a lot of units were built then. And those are now 40 to 50 years old. So the major systems then in these condo complexes, like the heating and the plumbing and the siding for these buildings, all this stuff, I mean, it is worn down by now. It's ancient, it's outdated. It's either already been replaced or it is past due and in need of being replaced. There are a lot of buildings that are like this and that fit that criteria. So that could be another factor that is hurting the condo market. I've seen it firsthand recently. I'm showing a condo to a client, and then after that, I look into it a little more. And next thing you know, it's like they're talking about they're going to be needing new siding and 16 units total. So if they're spending a million plus on siding, that is going to be an expensive special assessment, or and HOA dues will be increasing for each person who owns a condo in that complex. Nobody is super eager to buy condos with super old buildings, as they are more likely to be hit with special assessments for some big maintenance projects. And that is what we have in Seattle. We have a lot of older condos. That is something that needs to be fixed in Seattle. They need to allow for builders to more easily build condominiums, and to then help fix this supply shortage that we are seeing in Seattle, that is leading to these home prices going up, that is then leading to nobody being able to afford homes, which is then leading to homes sitting on the market. It's quite the cycle this real estate is here in Seattle. And you could just go in and talk about this for ages. But that is kind of all the time I've got for the market update from May. And if you have any follow up questions or are curious to hear more about any certain aspects, because there's so many different little niches and little small components in this, that I'm always happy to talk with you one on one, but just can't make a podcast about it, because this podcast would end up 2 to 4 hours if I tried to cover every aspect each time. But if you do have one of those questions, send me a message and I'm always happy to help you out. But until then, thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Till next time, peace.